Warning, this video is Smash Bros related, but it contains a lot of frightening and intense imagery from horror movies. Nothing R-rated, but if you're a younger viewer or someone who is easily scared, consider skipping this one. Click away now. You've been warned. In 3, 2, 1... Hello everybody, it's been a minute. We've missed ya. But while I'd love to catch up and chat about life, how hard your last math test was, or how much your kids have grown, why don't we just cut this intro short and get right into what we came here for. Simply for the fun of it, here are how 5 horror movie icons could fit neatly into the Smash Bros roster. Even if you haven't seen the films or read the book or ran from him in your nightmares, you've likely heard of Stephen King's It. Pennywise is more of an icon than half the Smash roster, no offense to Byleth or Dark Pit. Plus we're sorely lacking in clown representation, unless you count this guy. As fun as the old TV movie was, I think modern Pennywise would be the best fit for Smash Bros. He'd certainly be a unique presence, considering his stark blend of goofy and darkly sinister, which could translate into how he carries himself in the game. Literally, as his walk could be some sort of silly dance skip, while his sprint could be a full-force run with his hands outstretched toward his prey. Another way to emphasize this contrast could be using his A attacks to display his quirky side, such as full-on slapping his opponents for jabs, or headbutting them as a smash attack, while his special moves could expose the monster he truly is. One of its core predatory tactics is shapeshifting into its prey's worst fears, because fear is his favorite dinner seasoning.
Hey, that fortune cookie's looking at me!
As awesome as it would be to have him transform into the greatest fear of each Smash character, that would likely provide an overload of complications for the game developers. I think a more realistic way to portray this ability in-game would be this. For, let's say, his neutral special, he would have a decently long charging ability, perhaps slightly shorter than Cloud's limit charge. His charging animation could be something fun, like aggressively shaking, as one does for fun. Once fully charged, he could shapeshift into a version of himself that significantly counters some of the more powerful stats of his closest opponent. Basically, he targets their greatest weaknesses, or fear, for a decent amount of time. For example, once charged against a heavier opponent, he now takes less damage from them. If used against a lighter opponent, his smash attacks are stronger, dealing more damage. Other options, depending on who he's fighting, could be a stronger shield, less stun time, higher jump, more speed, less knockback for himself, more knockback for opponents, etc. Fun physical changes for these could include longer limbs, a change to his overall size, a creepier grin, his nasty spider legs, you get the picture. Other special attack possibilities could include his infamous bite, throwing balloons out that pop on impact, thus canceling opponents' attacks or briefly knocking them, a dizzying stun triggered by the dead lights in the back of his throat, and a cluster of red balloons for his recovery. Lastly, his final smash would have to incorporate its true spider-esque form, trampling across opponents unlucky enough to be caught in its path. Pennywise clearly has a lot of fighting potential. He just needs a safer outlet where he can express his thirst for violence in a healthy manner, where nobody ends up dead, just badly bruised and extremely salty. As a child, the original Carrie movie simultaneously scared the soul out of my body and also completely broke my heart. This poor young girl was emotionally and physically abused in and out of her home so horribly much that by the end of the film, you almost don't feel bad for all the people she kills during her murderous rampage. I said almost, okay? Obviously, painting the prom red is a giant no-no. With permission to unleash her rage on 3D animated foes, however, Smash Bros would be the perfect form of unprofessional therapy for her. Since Carrie isn't particularly physically imposing, I think it'd be fitting that most of her moveset rely on her extensive telekinesis, much like in her movies. She would barely lift a finger during her attack animations, with only a simple nod of the head or brief swipe of a hand doing the trick. No physical contact with opponents unless she's the one being hit. Even her A and smash attacks, as well as her grabs, would be telekinetic. Her jabs, for example, could send out invisible punches against foes as she simply stares menacingly into their eyes. Her special attacks could add some extra flair. With my idea for her neutral B, Carrie could telekinetically send out a projectile straight ahead with similar power and movement to a fully charged arrow from Youngling. It'd be a decently strong attack and would be triggered without charge, so I imagine it would have a fair amount of startup time. Perhaps we see the projectile lift up beside Carrie before flying forward. These projectiles could cycle between a knife, a different knife, and a car. Just kidding about the car. Maybe just various types of kitchen knives and utensils to reflect the chilling scene with her mother at the end of the film. Carrie's down special could be a chargeable wind box attack, like Mario's Flood and Squirtle's water gun, for example, but unique in its strength and in that it pushes out in all directions with Carrie at the center. It could be a powerful burst of telekinetic energy where Carrie screams with rage, and though it would not cause any damage, it would push nearby opponents back a significant distance at full power. Although we've seen it in many characters already, I think a reflector could fit as her side B. When the attack is triggered, whatever projectile threatens to hit her is halted by telekinesis just ahead of her for a few frames, before traveling back at her opponent at double speed and with minimally increased damage. Carrie's recovery could work similarly to Pit's, traveling in a direct line with slightly less distance and with more grace. Now here's a silly, quirky idea for her final smash. When triggered, a bucket of pig's blood could drop down from off screen and pour onto whoever stands within several feet of her. Any opponents hit are pulled into a brief scene where they stand on the prom stage drenched in blood. Carrie flies up ahead of them and hits the stage with loose flailing wires, causing it to catch fire and burn down with her victims on top. Pretty standard Nintendo stuff. Carrie is long overdue for some justice, or just a nice warm hug. If we can't get her the latter, the least we could do is send her an invitation with that infamous red stamp. Ah, the Xenomorph. My favorite bloodthirsty alien in all of cinema. I mean, look at that smile. This cute little fella has actually appeared as a fighter in video games before, like Mortal Kombat X and, Fortnite. But has he ever been in Smash Bros? No! So let's imagine what that would be like if just for a couple minutes. Now, there are a variety of these alien types across the multiverse of films, games, comics, fan fiction, but we're focusing on the original film version with nods to others. I don't care if I accidentally mix up lore or canon, and I don't think 90% of the 10 people who watch this do either, so let's not waste our precious time. For this guy, let's talk Final Smash first. You know that historical chest-bursting scene from the original Alien that influenced horror cinema forever? Now imagine Sonic is the victim here. Need I say more? I imagine Xenomorph would move similarly to Ridley. They're both large, otherworldly predators driven by an endless lust for human death, both with long, dangerous tails that have a razor-sharp point on the end. What could set the Xenomorph apart from Ridley in Smash is the fact that he can't fly, and that I believe he could move a bit faster. I also think his animations would lean a smidge more intelligent and less like an animal, at least compared to Ridley, if that makes any sense, because he is still a violent creature after all. For its moveset, let's go over its abilities we've seen on screen and figure out how we can fit them in. As previously stated, he's got that deadly tail. Since Ridley uses his tail in jabs and down B, we'll switch it up for the alien. Its own jabs could be vicious bites, comparable to this K Rool taunt. He's got that long ass head of his, might as well use it. Its tail could then be used for smash attacks, which Ridley does not do. He could turn and swipe it ahead of him, or stab above or to either side, and also perhaps use it for its grab. Another significant feature of the Xenomorph is the little mouth that extends out of its mouth. This nasty thing can jut out quite abruptly and is strong enough to break through a human skull. Since we can't immediately murder Smash characters like this, I think it could be used as a mighty neutral B attack. No charge, but a decently long startup complete with a creepy low growl, saliva dripping animation to warn opponents. It could have a similar power and knockback to a DK punch of about 75% charge, but send enemies flying in a horizontal line as opposed to somewhere diagonal. And then there's Xenomorph's deadly acid. I avoided finishing this script for 3 weeks because I couldn't think of an original attack for its acid. But after 13.5 seconds of thinking, I believe it could be utilized in one of his specials as a move that works much like Bowser and Charizard's fire. Instead of fire, of course, Xenomorph would spew nasty liquidy acid ahead of him. And rather than die down to a small flame, it would dry up completely after a couple seconds and need some cooldown time before use again. Opponents hit with acid could still move freely, but would slowly rack up damage as it burns them. Only time would heal the wounds. Less time for less acid, more time for larger amounts. Finally, its recovery. Let's be honest, Xenomorph's recovery would be trash. It can't fly. Probably be a short, desperate leap. Plus, I imagine the alien would be quite brutal on the ground, so it would make sense to struggle in the air. Overall, it's not so much about his distinct abilities, but more about how he carries himself, how he feels to play. If the developers approached it from the angle of making him feel like a vicious predator, consistently fighting to maul and tear his victims apart, I think Xenomorph could be a really unique, fun, deadly character. You can't make a list of horror icons without at least one famous slasher. And since I enjoy the Scream franchise and Ghostface has a fun design, he gets the golden ticket. I debated putting Michael Myers on the roster too, but 2 human fighters with knives is overkill. You hear that, Marth and Roy and Ike and Lucina and Crom? You're overkill. Ghostface has one main weapon, a knife. Swinging around sharpened metal is nothing new in Smash Bros, but like Xenomorph, a large part of what would make this character stand out would be his personality. Though there is a different human behind the mask in each Scream film, Ghostface always feels like the same individual character before the big reveal. That signature voice,
Hello, Samantha,
and his energized, erratic nature when hunting down his victims is always present. The way he hastily swings his weapon about, the way he purposefully thrusts his knife in whatever direction, that stuff could be illustrated in his regular and smash attacks. A grab into a jab could fittingly be rapid stabs of his opponents. Bloodless stabs, of course, this is Nintendo after all. Aside from his knife, another staple of Ghostface is his proclivity to call up his victims on their telephones. Maybe it's because he's too shy to talk in person, but he certainly likes to gab over the phone and quiz people while they're under deep stress of potential death. I had a couple ideas for special moves that could use this aspect. For one, he aggressively throws an old home phone out in front of him, damaging opponents that get smacked in the face before immediately pulling it back by its cord. Another option for this move is to make it chargeable. Ghostface could swing the home phone by its cord around his head like a lasso while B is held. The player could release it whenever, thrusting it forward and hitting his opponents before pulling it back to himself. The longer B is held, the harder the phone hits. So here's another more out there phone idea I had. One of his specials could have 3 uses per stock, similar to Banjo's Wonder Wave. In this attack, Ghostface pulls out his wireless home phone and speaks into it, asking his opponent, specifically the one nearest to him,
what's your favorite scary movie?
A series of 3 buttons will appear above his enemy's head, and they will have just about 2 seconds to input these in order. If done correctly, they're safe to continue the fight. If they mess up or take too long, they are stunned for several seconds, giving Ghostface time to wreak havoc on his prey. His final smash could take his victims into a scene that mimics the infamous first kill in the original Scream. His victim could slow-mo run their little tushies toward the screen Drew Barrymore style with Ghostface in pursuit. He grabs them from behind and stabs them in the heart. It stinks that we can't invite Ghostface into Smash. On the surface, he might appear generic and simple, but I think he'd be an all-around good time, much like the Scream franchise itself. You guys, I had planned to give this 5th spot to Samara, a soggy antagonist from The Ring, until I really started trying to figure out her moveset and realized how useless she is. I think we see her kill 1, maybe 2 people in each of her films. She doesn't fight much. I debated between her and another J-horror icon known to American audiences as The Grudge, and at the end of the day, The Grudge ultimately won me over. Surprisingly. Because I mean, they're both basically just dark-haired dead women who walk or crawl toward dumb people at a glacial pace and then stare at their victims who are so shy that the direct, prolonged eye contact literally kills them. It's all very stupid, but The Grudge beats out Samara for me due to a higher volume of silliness. And here at Erickson Gaming, we enjoy a silly or two. The Grudge could be quite a unique and ridiculously fun character if the developers were to lean heavily into her creepy weirdness. Her running animations, for example, could be a nasty, frenzied crawl, while her regular walk could be that lazy, wide-eyed saunter. And of course, her voice clips would be riddled with that signature throat crackle of hers, the one that sounds like she's got a crusty old frog lodged in her esophagus. Another staple of The Grudge are her long, luscious locks that sometimes even have a mind of their own. She could grab her opponents by reaching out with a section of stringy hair and pull them in face to face for some jabs, tightening her hair's grasp to damage them. Her hair could also whip and slash at enemies for regular jabs and tilts. For her neutral B, I had a fun idea that references her favorite scare tactic, wide-eyed staring. If an opponent is facing her within a certain range, let's say around the distance of Samus's grab, The Grudge can trigger this attack and catch them off guard. Entranced in her unblinking gaze, opponents would move very slowly, similar to the effects of the timer item. The more damage they've got already, the longer the effects will last. With enemies now in her gaze, The Grudge can move in for the kill with much less resistance. Seeing as The Grudge loves physical affection, another idea I had could work as her down or side special. The Grudge abruptly transforms into just a head with a trail of long, messy hair flowing behind her. She makes a quick, creepy dash sideways about the length of half of Final Destination. If she runs into an opponent during the attack, she returns to her full body form and abruptly crawls onto them, latching on with all her crick-cracking limbs and damaging them as her hair grows and tightens around them for several moments. My idea for her final smash is sort of the reverse of those like Mario's or Wii Fit Trainers. When triggered, The Grudge unleashes her hair, growing it at great speeds and lengths that very quickly cover the stage horizontally in front of her. Enemies caught up in it will be entangled, and after a moment, the ensnared opponents will be pulled back toward her. Upon reaching her, the screen will go black for just a moment, and all that will be seen is The Grudge's bright, wide eyes. Captured opponents will then be sent flying as if hit by a massive attack as the screen returns to normal. We'll likely see Mario's left shoe join the Smash roster before The Grudge does, but it doesn't make imagining her fighter potential any less fun. More fun than, say, watching the Grudge movies themselves. So what horror movie icons do you think could be worked into a Smash fighter? There are a lot I missed, like Mr. Freddy Krueger, who would be excellent choices, but were simply left out because I wanted some variety and I didn't want to make this video 107 years long. Thank you for watching, guys, and massive thank you to our Discord friends, Rhea, Alyssa, Kaylee, and Shadow that helped with the art. Be sure to subscribe if you're interested in a variety of Nintendo content. We post every century or two, but when we do, we try to make it something worthwhile that's as fun for you as it is for us. Take care, everybody.